we are here today to bring you another edition of What We Read because it is long overdue. I have quite a few books to talk about, and Mackie has a pretty good amount to discuss too. So, without further ado, we're going to share our thoughts. In this first section, we're going to be talking about the ebooks that we got to read this time around. I'm going to start. I read Free to Fall, which is by Lauren Miller, and it is a YA contemporary set at a boarding school. This boarding school is for really smart and privileged kids, and it basically establishes your future and makes sure that you're going to end up successful. But what is interesting about it is that there's also a sci-fi / technological mystery attached to it, and this is what the main character uncovers while she's there. There's also like a secret society involved and a lot of other things, and I didn't know too much about this book going into it, but I think that was a good thing because I didn't have any expectations, and I'm so glad to say that I really enjoyed it. It was very well done, and while I didn't end up invested in any of the characters, which if you've been watching the channel for a long time, you know that's something that I always look for in my books. Even though that didn't happen with this one, I still enjoyed the story of it. I enjoyed seeing how it would all unravel and trying to piece it together. I'm so glad I read it. I actually read it as part of a feature that my friend Andy from Andy's ABCs is doing called, I think it's called New to You, and it basically is that she has one of her favorite books recommended to one of us, like one of the people who signed up, and I ended up being given that one, and I'm so glad I finally read it.
The ebook that I read is Endgame by David Baldacci. It's the 5th book in the Will Robbie series. 5 books later, new characters have been introduced. My favorite of which is Jessica Reel, just as deadly, but just as approachable, hence the approachable assassins genre that I so like to coin, because it's the only way I can describe them. This is the end to their series because after all of the things that they've been through, especially from the last book, it's kind of a will they, won't they? Okay. And in true to form, in classic action movie genre fashion, the story's a little open-ended, but definitely leaning towards good endgame. It's the slowest book in the of all 5 books for me personally. I liked it. I would read Will and Jessica going to the supermarket. Like, I would read the hell out of it. If it was a full Big Brother style kind of hidden camera, I would read them. So I would recommend Endgame to anybody who likes David Baldacci.
The next ebook that I read is actually a novella, and it's part of the Bone Season series by Samantha Shannon. It is called The Pale Dreamer, and it basically recounts the story of how the main character in that series, Paige, becomes the Molisher, or the second in command of the Seven Seals, which is the gang she belongs to in the book. And it's a cute little novella. Like, I really enjoyed it because I liked being reunited with certain characters that I just enjoy so much in the main series. Like, it's always a treat to be in Paige's head, and this world that Samantha Shannon has created is so vibrantly done and so rich that, like, it's just fun to explore another aspect of it, and I really enjoyed that. It was incredibly short, but at least I had something of the Bone Season series to read this year. I don't know when we're getting the 4th one, and it's killing me a little bit on the inside. I would recommend it if you are a fan of the series. If you are not, you may find things a little bit confusing. It's one that's best read after reading at least the 1st book, if not all of the books that have come out up until now. So definitely a really good one.
Cool. My next ebook is a reread because in my forays into creativity, and boy, there have been a lot of those throughout the year, I just found myself getting drawn back to the Tapestry series, specifically Red Winter, because I kind of love when things come to like a really good kind of like high point and then it's all downhill from there. And that's what the 5th book in that series is. But it's by Henry Neff, and he's, I don't know, man. I mean, in the same, long before, or probably at the same time that Harry Potter was sort of already making the rounds, and it started out so innocent and then it gets really dark towards the end. This is pretty much of the same genre. I mean, it is middle grade technically, but the events here are so dark towards the end. To have these young men and women celebrate and take their losses and start moving on from the tragedy and become who they were meant to be is so visceral. I just had to come back to it, and so I recommend the Tapestry. It's I think there aren't enough stuff out there about it, and there should be. So.
And the last ebook I'm going to talk about is a book called London Belongs to Me by Jacqueline Middleton. It's about a girl who moves to London after she graduates from university to pursue a playwriting career, and it's basically the ups and downs of her first year.
And her name is?
Her name is Alex, which is obviously short for Alexandra.
And she's a...
And she's a playwright. first of all, let me tell you how I felt about the book, which is I enjoyed it a lot. It's not the greatest book in the world that I've ever read, but I loved the way that this story was told. It was just like a really good chick lit book, and I was in the mood for that, so it worked out perfectly. The writing was a little bit clunky at the start. It got better over the course of the book, which I thought was great. The author did a great job integrating like London spots and a little bit of fandom
and making
into
her
it,
scream a lot about it.
I really enjoyed. And I think the one really amazing thing about this book is the characters. Or yeah, it's the characters, because she did a really good job with them. All in all, it was good. It does play out a little bit predictably, which it's something I've come to expect with chick lit reads, so it doesn't bother me that much, but some people might find that a little bit of a, you know, too convenient plot. Anyway, the funny thing about this book is, so her name's Alex, right? And she likes to write, right? And she lives in London now, right? Anyway, her love interest in the book, his name is Mark. He's an actor, Irish actor, mind you. Well. And I just like, it was just so funny to me because obviously my name is also Alexandra, and his name is also Mark. So I was just like reading this and I'm like, and they also meet because of this whole like little community they formed. Of
theater.
So I'm just like, this seems oddly parallel to...
A little familiar, I think. Plus with all of the geek references. And
they reference Doctor Who a lot, which I think is really enjoyable. Anyway, it was a really fun read. I enjoyed it. I actually wanted to pick up the next one, so I might do that next month.
Okay.
Next section.
My turn. Now we go on to the graphic novel thing of it. And I want to call your attention first to DC Rebirth. I thought I was able to borrow a copy from the library of the DC Rebirth piece. This is post 52, post Flashpoint, everything, and this is them trying to just get it right. And of course, Jeff Johns, right?
That name sound familiar.
A big DC name that made everything good. Anything Jeff Johns touches just basically, mostly turns to gold. And it's basically a reintegration of old elements that people sort of wish they could have included in the New 52 and pre-Flashpoint, and it's basically DC starting all over again, hence Rebirth, and tying up loose ends that made everybody go, what the hell, in the New 52 place. So that was fun. They've got a bunch of new, and then to pair them up, I finally got it to trying to get back to the Green Lanterns. I sort of didn't like where it went after the New 52 kind of came out, and now with Rebirth I thought, okay, let's give it a shot. And we have two POC lanterns,
nice.
Right? That are not Jon Stewart, right? And they're great. They're finding their feet, and their or rings. I don't know, but there's a thing.
What do you call it?
Rings. They're getting it done. They're totally getting it done. It didn't scream Blackest Night. I don't know how you can follow something like that.
God, Blackest Night.
You
is
can't.
So good, though.
But I love where this is going. So the big deal is that Wally West is back. He was absolutely gone. That lovely carrot top little speedster was completely out. Like he never existed back in the New 52. Now he's back and he's tying everything together and he's bringing elements of that old world where he came from into the new. And I thought, oh yes, about time. Because, and we'll get to my other review later, it's so critical that Wally is back, both from a fan level and even from a narrative perspective. So, very fun. Please pick up DC Rebirth and support, because they are just doing such great work.
Okay, let me introduce you to my new manga obsession. I binge read in an evening the first 4 volumes of Fruits Basket, which is by Natsuki Takaya, and I'm just gonna like take a moment to appreciate all these character covers because they're amazing. It's essentially a story about an orphan girl who lives in a tent on some land, and this land is owned by a very rich family, and one day they discover that she's been living on this land.
Squatting, technically.
Yeah, basically. And so she somehow winds up getting invited to live in one of the houses with some of the members of this family, only to discover that there's actually a bigger secret, and that there are 12 members of the family, 13 actually, 13 members of the family who, let's just say there are members of the family who are associated with specific Chinese zodiac signs, and if a person of the opposite gender hugs them, they turn into the animal of the zodiac sign. Yes, it sounds ridiculous, I'm aware of this.
And if there are any fans of Ranma 1/2, it's kind of like that, only instead of water, it's hugs from the opposite sex.
it's ridiculous. I know, I understand this premise is ridiculous, but also
they don't even explain it, it just happens.
Yeah, exactly. It's just really fun. I'm a sucker for stories where the authors manage to do so well with creating large casts of characters that I can really get behind, and I think that's where the strength of this particular series comes in. It's the characters that really drew me in. Like, I was dying reading the third and the fourth book for the first time because I reread the first and second, and then the third and the fourth were new to me, and I was just like dying, and now I immediately pre-ordered the rest of it. Not pre-ordered, I immediately ordered everything else. There are 12 volumes in the series, and I'm really excited to finish it because I really want to know what happens.
These next two graphic novels I got at the library as well. Again, one of them is from is a DC Rebirth piece, and the other is a Road to Rebirth piece, right? So they to wrap it up, and it's Titan's Hunt, and the first TPB of Titans, wherein the original Titans, and again, absolutely no hate, nothing but love for Starfire and Beast Boy and Raven and Cyborg, right? Definitely awesome. Those are the Titans that pretty much most children, and now they're grown up, sort of know and grew up with. Like, I have like little kids that I used to know that are, you know, now friends, now that we're all adults, and they're like, oh, I love the Teen Titans growing up, and I thought, oh, so did you love that whole Donna Troy, Dick Grayson thing? And they're like, who's? And at that moment, my brain kind of stops, and I'm just like, of course they don't know the original Titans. Of course they're like these guys. They're not too aware of Garth and Wally and Donna and Speedy. They don't know those guys. In the New 52, Wally West was black, totally different character from the redhead Wally West. So black Wally West, ginger Wally West, right? Totally different characters. And that was fine, because the world was remade and stuff like that. But here they said that the actual Wally existed, and now he's back. And this is the story of how they retrace their steps and how the Titans come together again. It's actually pretty heartbreaking because in this new world, they don't know who they are at first. And then things start to happen where their memories of the old world, of the old universe, start to get triggered again. And that's basically the story. Wally comes back, and with him the memories. And from there, the Titans have reformed.
Alright, my next two books are actually graphic novels, and it's Wires and Nerve and Gone Rogue by Marissa Meyer with illustrations by Doug Holgate. And these are basically spin-off / companion novels to her Lunar Chronicles series. Oh. They tell the story of how Eiko, who is the android in the series, goes down to Earth to deal with the remaining special lunar operatives that are causing a lot of chaos. But it turns out there's actually this whole like secret plan that's been hatched in order to, you know, basically have these lunar soldiers fight for what they think they deserve in terms of treatment, and it's so good. I reread the first one in preparation for the second, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was just so fun being back with Eiko and seeing all these familiar faces from the Grampian crew, which I absolutely loved. And the plot is really strong for both of these novels together. I enjoyed the second one just a touch more because there's a lot more emotion in it, for me at least, and I really enjoyed seeing everyone's relationships with one another, whether it's friendship or romance. There was a lot of squealing involved when I read it, so I really, really enjoyed it. And if you love the Lunar Chronicles, if you love the Rampion crew, definitely get yourself a copy of both of these. They are phenomenal.
And now we go to review books. I want to start with a book that has already come out. I think February, like first week of February it came out. It's the Unicorn, this is my copy of the Unicorn Chronicles arc, book 1, The Whisper in the Stone by Camilla Benko. I saw her at BAA last year. And look, she signed it and she stamped a golden unicorn on it. And when she did, I thought, this book's gonna be special. And I have to say, this book is everything that was good about 80s storytelling. Aww. With none of the weird 80s storytelling elements. And hey man, it was the 80s. Whatever you were was your name. I mean, Beastman, Lion-O, She-Ra. No hate, I'm just saying that's how they named people, right? Not here. The story is about two sisters, so I totally think you should totally love this. It's about two sisters who...
You should totally love this, not like you will. You should.
She should. I mean, ideally, if the prediction right. And it's a story about two sisters, Claire Martinson and Sophie Martinson, of course, have inherited, their family has inherited their eccentric aunt's old mansion. And apparently their aunt was like this art collector and had like relics from all over the place. Older sister is adventurous and awesome, but in this book also a cancer survivor. And then the younger sister is you know, artsy, awesome, just kind of, but also introverted and shy. And so when Sophie climbs this thing, she's like, oh, darn it, I have to go. They emerge from out of a well into another kingdom.
Portal fantasies.
And then the rest of it, you know, kind of happens. And it's a world where that used to be blessed with unicorns. And now they're not there anymore because this war came out and the guilds had warred, and then the last unicorn was murdered.
Don't go murdering unicorns.
Don't do that. The world turns into a horrible place. And that's the world that they come into, and there's this prophecy that, you know, somebody's going to bring the unicorns back. I mean, come on. Book ends magnificently. Total cliffhanger because it's part of a series, and I respect that now. There's no more raging against it, so I only hope that
there's raging.
Well, yeah, this one is in the raging and totally justified. So I would absolutely recommend it to anybody who's ever wanted to see the best of the 80s that I don't always see anymore. Now it's kind of ironic relationships and snark, and that's fine. I'm ironic and snarky, but this is just the purity of there is a room in the house that has something that'll lead you to another world where you will discover your destiny and that you are needed whether you like it or not. What will you do? I have dreamed of stuff like this, and so I totally recommend it. I hope they come out with books 2, 3, 4, and all the way to 8. I don't care. I'll collect all of them.
Okay, my next book is also a review book, and it is The Bells by Danielle Clayton. This is the first in her new series, and it is about a girl named Camille, and she has grown up with her sisters training to become a belle. In this world, beauty is power because everyone is born sort of gray and mottled and not, you know, vibrant and colorful like we all are in real life. And the bells have the power to imbue people with different looks and beauty and color. They're trained to do all sorts of things.
So everyone's monochrome?
Basically, yes.
Dang!
Unless you're treated by a belle. And so they are off to the capital, basically, of this kingdom in order to meet the royal family, and one of them will get chosen to be the favorite, the queen's favorite, and she will get to attend the royal family and obviously be in a position of prestige and power.
Make them colorful.
But what they don't know is that underneath there is a lot of political turmoil happening, and there's also a very magical secret as well. And
it's making everyone gray.
It's very interesting. It was hard at first at the start because I wasn't sure what to make of it, but I really enjoyed, or like really got immersed into this lush and vibrant world that Danielle created, because to have beauty be such a big part of the story obviously means that her descriptions were very like lush, and she got to talk about like how things were colored and how things tasted and how things looked, and that was really fabulous. And I also really liked the story. It was very interesting to see that it was not just this one girl's quest to become the favorite and like all of that. It was also like there was other stuff going on in this kingdom, and she had to play her part and figure out what she wanted to do about it. Thematically, this book is also really great because it explores the concept of beauty and beauty as power. And I think that's always a very interesting thing to like think about. Like, what does it mean for certain people? What does beauty mean to them? Like, we always say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and that's something that you will actually see like and question a lot in this book, because every character has a different perspective on beauty. And it is really interesting, and it gets really exciting towards the second half, which I thought was really fun. I'm mad because this is one of those books that ends with a cliffhanger, and you're, well, it's not a full cliffhanger, it's like a light one, but you're kind of like,
well, what happens next now? And
I have to wait till 2019. Do you know how sad that makes me? It makes me very sad. So yeah, it was definitely very enjoyable. I know this has been getting a lot of buzz, and it actually hit the New York Times bestseller list. If you were thinking of picking up a copy, I would highly recommend doing so. It was really good. The next book I read was another contemporary fiction book, and it's The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. And I'm sure a lot of people might recognize this one because it's been popping up everywhere recently because a lot of people have loved it. I was not one of those people, unfortunately. I liked it, but I didn't love it. And the thing is, there are so many good things about this that I could talk about. Like, let's talk about how the two main characters are in an interracial relationship. The girl is black and the guy is white, and that made for an interesting dynamic. They were also very interesting as individuals because they each had their own thing going for them, and I think that definitely, you know, piqued my interest in the story as well. What I wasn't like quite sold on was their romance. Like, they had a few good moments and all of that, but like there was too much like, I don't know what it is. It was just like the way that their relationship played out was a little too not to my taste, so I guess I didn't love that as much. And I also felt like, I don't know, there was just something about the way the writing was as well that just didn't work for me. So it was a solid read. I wouldn't say that it's a new favorite or anything, but I don't regret reading it either. Also, the main character in this one is also named Alexa, so that's the second book this month that I get to talk about with a main character named with the same name as me. Then I actually read this as an e-galley, but I had to buy a finished copy. It's American Panda by Gloria Chow. It was a YA contemporary story about a girl who goes to college and she's trying to live up to her parents' expectations. And her parents are Taiwanese American, and obviously they just want the best for her, so that means 1, getting into med school, and 2, getting married to a proper Taiwanese boy of their choice with a proper upbringing and a good solid future. The problem is, the main character in this book doesn't really want to become a doctor, and she's also not quite interested in being set up with this perfect person that her parents have in mind for her. And so she is struggling throughout the whole book to come to terms with both of these things, because she doesn't want to disrespect her parents, but she also doesn't want to lose herself to their demands. And the thing is, this is such a recognizable struggle for many, many people, particularly Asian people. Even Filipino people have this problem too. It's not really a problem, it's more like, it's just something that happens as you're growing up, where you're trying to make sense of who you are and what you want out of life, and trying to reconcile that with what your family wants for you and insist on you having.
Otherwise, for the rest of your life, your entire family goes dishonor on you, dishonor on your family, dishonor on your cow.
That was something that I hadn't seen quite reflected in this particular
Otherwise
way
known
before.
as Christmas parties. Sorry.
And I thought it was really great. I think Gloria Chow did such a good job with it, and it's nuanced in a way because it's Taiwanese American, it's not, you know, Filipino American or Korean American or Japanese American.
Yes, it's got that cultural...
So it's definitely got a specific cultural nuance to it. But it was also extremely relatable across the board, and I think a lot of people are going to like get that vibe from it. But what I loved about it is, yes, it tackles all of the serious stuff, but there's also like a lot of cute moments in it. Like, she makes this friend that I really enjoyed. She meets a cute boy who I really love. He's Japanese American, BT dubs. We're just gonna like sail with that there. And you know, it was funny and it was cute, but it was also the kind of book where I was like, hey, I recognize that and I know what that feels like, and it was really good. So I really enjoyed this. And then I read a Lisa Kleypas book. I read an arc of it, actually. This is a finished copy. It's Hello Stranger, and this is the 4th book in the Ravenel series, and it tells the story of the romance that brews between Detective Ethan Ransom and Dr. Garrett Gibson. And I liked it because it reminded me of another historical romance book I really love, Castles by Julie Garwood, because the guy in this one doesn't necessarily do a lot of legal things, because he kind of works as a spy / informant for the government, which so technically it's legal but not legal if you know catch my drift. And of course that gets him to a lot of shady places. And the girl in this one I loved as well, because she's a doctor, and she's she's the only female doctor in London at this time, like practicing, and she does not take shit for anyone who's like, I don't want to be treated by a woman doctor. She's like, well, I'm still gonna be a doctor, so I don't care. It was just fun to see them like kind of like come up against each other and grade against each other, and then eventually realize that their strong personalities suited each other, and I really enjoyed that. I will say that the plot is fairly predictable. Like, I guessed about half of it before it was over, but it didn't stop it from being any less enjoyable. This is actually probably tied for Marrying Winterborn as the one I like best in this particular Lisa Kleypas series, so definitely check it out.
The next book I'm reviewing is The Serpent's Secret, Kiranmala and the Kingdom Beyond, Book 1. I love that it's a Book 1 because it definitely is a world and a character that deserves books 2 and 3, maybe even 4, 5, and 6. This girl, so Kiran she's a Jersey girl, born and raised.
I love that, actually.
She's a Jersey girl, born and raised. Kiran hails from an Indian immigrant family, so that subgroup is where she draws her culture from. Okay. It alludes to a lot of the teasing that you get as an immigrant, specifically coming from India, and the nuances of that, the food, the terms of endearment from your family, the fact that your parents are so full of, you know, like words of wisdom, and you're like just your own thing, and they insist on dressing her up as a princess, and they insist that she is a princess, and she's like, yeah, that's just because you guys love me. But surprise, she actually is. And on the day of her 12th birthday, this protective spell around her that was supposed to hide her from the Serpent King just dissolves. And I love that there's
oh
a bit of...
This sounds like so much fun.
It is though, and I have to recommend this to you if there's this book I would tell you.
Read it.
Because there is a ship here that is exactly
like
the whole
ships.
I hate you. It's like I hate you too.
I love
but can
ships.
we... This is the shippiest shippy ship of ever.
See, what I love about middle grade, love and hate about middle grade, is that there are ships, and you know they're a ship, but no one acknowledges they're a ship.
No. See, the ship in this book is really cute. It's a little more self-aware than Percy and Annabeth. And more importantly, there is a strong, very strong female lead.
I love that.
That
I'm
is
always a sucker for
that just and I love that she's a person of color, but she just happens. Like, you know how it's not about that, but it's totally about that. It has that very extreme cultural sensitivity, but doesn't make it about that.
See, I love books like that. Those are great.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not subtle, but it's not all about that either. It's about a young girl who has to rescue her parents, who realizes that she's more than what she actually is, and goes through an entire adventure. There's even sort of like again, in Rick Riordan fashion, there's like this prophecy and this thing that they have to follow in order to make it work. So
I'm a sucker for stories like that. It's just like...
Anybody who loves Percy Jackson, but wants something more than, but would love an Indian myth and legend twist to it, this is your book. It's got, they even put a science to it.
Nice.
So, highly recommended. You have to read that next.
I'm going to. Well, I also have that, and then I have the one from Ripper and Am Friends, which I'm excited about. Okay, the last two books I'm going to talk about are actually my 2 5-star reads of the year. I actually had one more, but I already talked about it earlier, and it was a graphic novel. It was Gone Rogue. So, we're just going to pretend that, you know, you guys knew that already. Right now, we're going to talk about the other 2 books that I gave 5 stars to. The first book is Reign the Earth by A.C. Goggin, and this is the first book in the Elemente series. It's about a girl named Shalia, and she marries the king of another land called the Bone Lands in order to protect her people and to broker peace between them. And she's really determined for that to be their future, only to uncover that that's maybe not necessarily what he had in mind. He, on the other hand, is kind of on a hunt to find all the remaining Elemente, like people with elemental powers, and destroy them because that's where he's at. And you find out more about his motivation and her thoughts on it as the book progresses. But suffice to say that I was very surprised by this book. I knew I was going to enjoy it because I'm always on the lookout for books with elemental powers in them, and I liked the way they did it in this one. I also enjoyed the story. I thought it was very interesting, and it was something different yet again because the main character is not necessarily like one of those badass warrior girls. She is a girl who knows her place and what she's capable of, and she's better at the relationships and political maneuverings of her position, which I thought was really refreshing. Like, it was something different to take. I think that the strongest points of this book lie in the way that the characters and their relationships are portrayed, however. I really enjoyed Shalia. I thought she was so interesting because she was smart and she did have some savvy, but you could also see her vulnerabilities and how sometimes she might have missed things just because she's young and she's inexperienced and she's still learning all these things. And there's like a whole host of people that I enjoy in this book because it's basically like A.C. Goggin literally took every single kind of archetype of a boy that I enjoy and threw it into this book. Because like there's
so basically all the captains in
there's
Bleach?
like a captain of the
Okay.
There's like a captain of the guard in this book, and then there's like someone who's under him who's a little bit more like open and forthright, and then there's a bunch of brothers in this book, and they're all very different. One is more like rebellious, and the other one is a little bit more subtle. I love them, clearly, if you couldn't tell. And there are also a lot of interesting female characters in this book as well, which definitely gets me excited for the next ones because as far as I know, every book in the series is going to follow a different female protagonist, so that will be very interesting to see what happens next. I will say that there is a lot of dark stuff that goes on in this book. There's a lot of abuse touched on, both physical and emotional, and it's very intense, and I was very uncomfortable with it a lot of the time. But what I liked about it was that it didn't excuse those things, and they're portrayed as terrible things and told, like, the characters recognize that they're terrible things, but you also see how they end up happening. Like, you see where the fault lines lie and why it was like that and how it gets there. No justification, but there's an explanation, and that's always interesting to me. Plus, it also kind of has this thing where it showcases how that like your relationships also shape who you are as a person, because the people involved in the abuse in those relationships they react very differently, because it's not just one person, it's a lot, and their reactions are very different. And neither one is right or wrong, like there's no such thing. It's just very interesting to see how different people react to the same situation, and it's very interesting. All in all, there was a lot for me to like pick at this book. Like there was so much in the characters and in the magic and in the story, and I'm very much looking forward to the next one. Oh, and by the way, this one is signed because I went to the event for it the day after I finished reading it, because why not? And the last book I want to talk about is not coming out until June, unfortunately, so you're gonna have quite a wait. But I read and loved My Plain Jane, which is by Brody Ashton, Cynthia Hand, and Jody Meadows, and they call themselves the Lady Janies. The first book in this series was My Lady Jane, and it was about Lady Jane Grey, who was queen for 9 days and then got beheaded in real life, and whose story they sort of put a little magic into and sort of changed a little bit. So that was a really fun read, and I enjoyed that so much last year. But holy crap, I loved My Plain Jane, and I don't know if part of it is because I read Jane Eyre like a little bit before I read this one, so I was still kind of fresh on the story and the characters and stuff. The way they put a twist on Jane Eyre for this story is so good. In this book, Jane is an actual living human being, and she is friends with a girl named Charlotte, aka Charlotte Bronte. And in this book, they live in a world where there is a society of people who deal with spirits and ghosts in London.
Wow.
And so the third character is a boy named Alexander who is from that society. And so these three have their paths crossed because a number of things have happened at the start of the book. And it is just the most enjoyable. Like, I don't normally read ghost books. Let me preface by saying that. But if they were like this, I would probably read more of them, and it was so much fun. There were so many nods to Jane Eyre. All three characters were really great to read about, and they all had different things that they were trying to deal with and make sense of, and I think that was handled really well. I just think it was so clever to put like these paranormal aspects to this story and to weave Jane Eyre into it too. So good, so compelling, absolutely loved it. I laughed the entire time I was reading it because there were so many like, first of all, there were a lot of like random modern references in the story, which I thought was hilarious. And then there's a lot of banter in it, which I loved. And then like every time there was a nod to Jane Eyre, I was like, I know that! It was great. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed myself, clearly, and I would highly, highly recommend pre-ordering it, checking it out when it comes out. It's so good. Alrighty friends, so we finally reached the end of this massively long wrap-up because I apparently had too much to say. Don't we always? We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you found something new to add to your TBR. Do feel free to tell us if you've read any of the books and what you thought of them. And we would also love to hear what the last book you read was and what you thought of it. Yes? So, you'll be seeing us with another video very soon. Possibly a book haul, possibly a vlog, you never know.
Yeah. I don't know, I had nothing to say to that. But yes.
Anyway, we'll see you guys soon. If you're looking to find more of us online, we'll link to all the social media down below, or you can check out the blog where Maki still has a ton of reviews to catch up on posting, and so do I. Okay, till next time, bye! We need to take a picture.